Hi team, welcome to the end of another scorcher of a week. Despite the heat, we've managed to get some stuff done since the last video and we can't wait to share it with you. Let's go take a look. We're going to start off this week checking out our cherry tomatoes and our plum tomatoes, which have both been providing us with a lot of tomatoes. Maybe we'll talk about it in a separate video, but we've been doing some pretty fun stuff with them this time around, including fermenting and dehydrating. But as we look at some of these clusters, there's so many cherry tomatoes in here. It doesn't look like any are ready for us to pick today. We did pick a whole bunch yesterday, probably 15-ish. But it looks like we are going to have an abundance of small tomatoes as we go through the end of August at least. Taking a quick look over here at our turnips. They are very wilted right now. It's pretty warm out. It's above 30 degrees right now, and so they're pretty floppy. As pitiful as they look right now, when it cools down, they're super full-leaved and they look great, so I'm not too concerned about them. Let's see if we can spot any turnips down here, or if it's too bright. There's a nice one right there. A little small one here. Yeah. So we're gonna get some turnips. Our carrots, on the other hand, have not been faring so well. They're getting very shaded out by the turnips. But we've also had some grazing from some of our creatures here as well. I'm not sure if it's rabbits or groundhogs, but regardless, we are getting a lot of damage from them. Speaking of damage from creatures, this row is where there used to be a whole bunch of beets and a whole bunch of rainbow chard. And those have just been decimated. Right here, this is the only remnant left. So we're not getting any of that this year. We expected that could be the case. So it's unfortunate, but relatively expected. And also, while we're looking here at this turnip stuff, you can see that it's getting eaten quite a bit. I'll take you around to the back corner of the property later to talk a little bit more about that. This is a fun addition to the property here. We've got turtle heads. Oh, and I've caught a bee. A bumblebee right in the turtle head. They get right in there. Turtle heads are a great pollinator for later in the summer season after a whole bunch of other flowers die down. As you can see in the background, our hostas, all the flowers have left those, and so our hummingbirds no longer have those as a source of nutrition, but we've got these turtle heads here, and both the bees and the hummingbirds really seem to enjoy those. Just want to take a gander at our morning glories that have completely overtaken this part of the fence. In the morning, these are all open and gorgeous, but around 1 or noonish, they start to close up for the day. I guess that's where they get their name from. But you can see right in here, there's these bulbs, and this is actually my first time noticing these, so I'll pay attention to these over the coming weeks and see what comes out of those. Taking a look from this part of the property, you can see some of the experimentation that we're doing here in terms of yard upkeep. The grass here grows really fast, and so one of the approaches that we're experimenting with is mowing out paths or corridors for us to actually walk and commute around the property on, and letting the rest go longer. The idea is that we'll have to mow it less, and we might get some natural beauty out of it, but in the event that any of these unmowed sections get too unwieldy, we'll chop it back and use the grass clippings as additional mulch and nutrients for the garden in the back there. There's a little bit of a sneak preview as to some stuff going on in the back. I'll tell you all about that when we get over there. So standing here, we can see what is, I suppose, the main path from the driveway through to the gardening area. And so I'm going to follow this path down to all those wood chips and explain a little bit what we've done over the last week or two. It's a really nice walk to come to the back garden through this path, especially if I turn around real quick. It really does go under this massive tree, and there's so much shade under here that it feels entirely different compared to when you're in the rest of the yard, which is a fantastic thing for a day like today. But here, if we're looking, there's some new additions. You can see that we've got a whole bunch of fence posts along the way here as we are starting to build out our fence for our garden next year. As we are preparing the soil to be an excellent medium, we don't want all of our efforts to go to the creatures that we share this property with. And so we're building a fence that is hopefully groundhog and rabbit proof, but off to the side here, and maybe even strewn throughout other parts of the properties, we'll have a somewhat sacrificial garden as well, so that they are enticed to go to the easier source of food and they leave the other food sources alone. So if we're looking down at the ground here, we've got 2 feet of chicken wire, and looking over at where we've placed the posts are approximately in the middle of the chicken wire. So as we progress with this fence, this chicken wire is going to be covered by wood chips and actually another almost bent layer of chicken wire. We'll show you what we mean in a future video. This is intended to serve as a ground barrier. So if a critter comes up to the fence and they're wanting to get inside, they're likely to dig down right at the fence level or a tiny bit back. This has the goal of stopping them from digging in about a foot away from the fence. So if they try and dig down here, they'll hit the chicken wire and hopefully be deterred. We'll see how that works out. Maybe we'll have to put more down, we'll see. So we've got this as a perimeter all the way around the garden, and as you can see, we have T-bar posts up around the perimeter as well. In a future week, we are going to be adding the vertical aspects to this fence, and we will probably be adding a gate right here early next year. We don't really need it this year, so we'll probably wait until early next year to install it, just because we can. Another development in this area since the last video is there used to be a tree here, It was, I think, a small maple. It wasn't really going to serve our purposes, and it was in a really inconvenient spot because it would block the ability to put a tree there, probably a tree there, maybe a tree here, and a tree there. So this one tree's position happened to be in a place that would likely be unbeneficial for all of the food foresting that we are planning on doing in here. And so it had to go. It was also a maple and did not serve any like food forest functions. We can't eat maple. I suppose we could do sap in a future year, but we decided to get rid of it so that we could fill it with some sort of abundance and edible food. Probably going to keep this one for a little while though. This is a spruce. So in this center garden, we've got a couple of sunflowers, we've got a whole bunch of petunias, and we've got some sage. This is all doing really well. Oh, but I'm just noticing this little thing over here for the first time. I imagine this is a weed, but it's got a gorgeous natural blue to it. Ordinarily, I would be keen on ripping this out of here, but I would love for this to bloom into a whole bunch of little blue flowers. I'm gonna keep that thing around. Let's head over there. Actually, just sitting here for a moment, you can see that we've created paths to serve almost as arteries that allow us to get to all of our favorite places on the property without having to go through the tall grass. I think this is like a really immersive experience, and I can't wait to see how this can evolve and what other colors we can bring into this space. So here we have a Japanese beetle trap. And the reason we've done that is because in a lot of this foliage over here, we noticed hundreds of Japanese beetles. And we'll get in close here and see some of the devastation that they've caused to some of these plants on the right, but I also want to take a look at some of these wild cucumbers over here too, because they're pretty neat. So here we have a whole bunch of wild cucumbers actually. I think there's like 6 or 7 in this shot. Unfortunately, these are not edible, but they're pretty neat looking. They tendril and grow just like a normal cucumber, except instead of the cucumbers that we know and love, these are spiky and, again, are not edible. But it's still a neat thing to have around on the property. So here's this trap. Oh, we've got a Japanese beetle that might decide to get trapped as we speak. No? Okay, that's cool. So I guess the idea is that they go in here and they end up trapped down here and die out. It's pretty hefty right now, but let's take a look at why we decided that we should do something about this. If I get in on this area, hopefully we can capture stuff like this. This used to be a leaf. It is now just the stems of a leaf. And this is all from Japanese beetles. Here's a little cluster right here. These things are a lot. They eat a lot. And since we have so many, I'm pretty happy to have them all over in this back corner where we're not actually growing anything, but we wanted to get a little bit defensive in advance of next year. And I'll just leave you with a nice shot from this back corner of the rest of the property. Thanks for hanging out with us this week. Can't wait to give you the next update. Take care.